Hello, everyone. This is Debra Richardson, and today I am putting the AP in Happy, where accounts payable teams are empowered to protect the vendor master file from fraud. This podcast will give a voice to accounts payable team members by talking about the growing reality of cyber attacks in their world and which vendor setup and vendor management techniques they can apply to protect the vendor master file from fraud. Need training? Visit the Vendor Process Training Center to enroll in your choice of weekly live and on-demand training sessions. Plus, get access to vendor setup form templates and reference tools that will help you and your team avoid fraud, fines, and bad vendor data. So sign up for a free account to get access to free training sessions, vendor process FAQs, and a resource library with information you need to manage your vendor master file. Visit training.debrarrichardson.com today. The link will be in the show notes. Of course, the IRS has updated the 1099-MISC and 1099-NEC again, and this time it's effective for reporting tax year 2025 payments to your vendors. It's not that bad, though. Keep listening. Welcome to episode 337, April 2025 changes to the 1099-MISC and 1099-NEC. So I need to start here with a disclaimer. Make sure that you seek a tax professional for any questions about tax filing or the 1099-MISC or the 1099-NEC forms distributions to your vendors. I am not a tax professional. My background is as a AP senior manager over global vendor setup and maintenance. I had a team of 17. We didn't do anything all we did was vendor setup and maintenance requests. We maintained 140,000 active vendors across 7 different ERPs. And as you can imagine, that is a lot of 1099s. There's a lot of 1042s too, but we used to issue anywhere between 24,000 and 30,000 1099s. And because of that, I talk about that process of tax filing and issuing the 1099 forms because that is something that we did. And I talk about it from a vendor setup and maintenance perspective. And on that note, I will have a link to a training session that will include a year-end checklist for 1099-MISC, 1099-NEC, and 1042S reporting. And that is, I believe, at some point in November, either October or November. So I'm going to leave a link to that training session in the show notes. And so if you're interested in it, go ahead and click through and learn more about it and enroll in it. And I will include not only this change, but any other changes that have come up throughout the year that affect tax year 2025 reporting and forms distribution. So again, check the link in the show notes. So going back to this change, this is definitely one of the things that I would be interested in if I were still in that role. And if you're in the role of handling vendor setup and maintenance, maintaining the vendor master file, and issuing your vendors 1099s and maybe even the IRS tax filing, then you definitely want to hear about the two changes changes. And so the IRS, right, they always keep us on our toes. They make changes, continuously make changes to our 1099 forms. And I really focus on the 1099-MISC and the 1099-NEC because those are the ones that have the types of payments reported on them that we typically make in accounts payable. And those by far of those 24 to 30,000 1099s I would issue, those would probably be about 98% of them. We did have some 1099Ss, which are for easements because we did pay some easements, but any other type of 1099s that we would get to create those forms and send them to the vendors were from other departments because they already knew we were creating 1099s. They were like, hey, create mine. And so we would get their information and create like the 1099 div or other 1099 INTs for interest payments. And so, but overall, we would generate the 1099-MISC and 1099-NEC. So those are the two that I focus on. But again, disclaimer, make sure you're checking with your tax professional, your leadership, whoever you consult with for not only the tax filing, but also issuing and distributing 1099-MISC or 1099-NEC before you make any changes based on this information. But I do want to report it to you because now it gives you a base that you can go and build on. So first off, there are new versions of both the 1099-MISC and the 1099-NEC. The prior version was January 2024, and now there are versions, or the two versions are or have a revision date of April 2025. And so when you go to issue your 1099s in January, make sure that they have a revision date of 2025. And that's going to be important because there is one change to the forms, and that is excess golden parachute payments, which I'll talk about in a minute. Most of you probably won't even have this type of payment to report, so you won't affect you at all, but it will affect you in the sense that you have to use this new form or the new versions of the form that now include revisions based on excess golden parachute payments. And that's because prior years golden parachute payments were used to be reported on box 14 of form 1099-MISC, but now they are reported on box 3 of form 1099-NEC. So what does that mean? That means that with revision, the revision dated April 2025 on the 1099-MISC, box 14, again, which used to be where golden parachute payments or excess golden parachute payments were reported, it's now grayed out. Now on the 1099-NEC, right, on the January 2024 version, box 3 used to be grayed out, but with the April 2025 version, it is no longer grayed out because that is where excess golden parachute payments are now reported. So they just flipped the forms of where excess golden parachute payments are reported. And let me just clarify, I think in saying some of those, saying it so many times, sometimes I said golden parachute payments, sometimes I said excess golden parachute payments. And you do, or we do need to make sure we distinguish between the two because they are different. And so let's talk about golden parachute payments and excess golden parachute payments. So this information I am getting from the Instructions for forms 1099-MISC and 1099-NEC, and those instructions also have a revision date of April 2025. So I am going to put a link not just to those instructions so you can, look and do additional research on your own, but I'm also going to put links to the Form 1099-MISC and 1099-NEC with the revision dates of April 2025, so you can see those for yourself as well. But in the instructions for Form 1099-MISC and 1099-NEC, they do talk about both golden parachute payments and excess golden parachute payments. So let's start off with the golden parachute payments. And these are payments that are related to an acquisition. So there's some type of change of ownership of a corporation or the assets of a corporation. And these payments can be made to either contractors or employees. And that does matter because if payments are made to contractors, they are reported in box 1 of the 1099 NEC as non-employee compensation. And they are reported on 1099 NEC in box 1. Now, this was taken from page 10, again, of the instructions for forms 1099-MISC and 1099 NEC. Now, if the payments were made to employees, however, and not contractors, then those payments are reported on the W-2. So those are golden parachute payments. Now, according to page 11, which is the next page of those same instructions, for tax year 2025, in box 3 of Form 1099 NEC, you will enter in any excess golden parachute payments. And excess golden parachute payments is the amount over the base amount, which is calculated separately as the average annual compensation for services includable in the individual's gross income over the most recent 5 years. Now, again, this is something that I've just taken very verbatim from page 11 of the instructions for forms 1099-MISC and 1099-NEC. So make sure you check that out because it also has some additional references. It's CQA 38 through QA 44 of regulations, section I 280G-1 for how to compute the excess amount. But see, this is where I say this is probably something not that the vendor set up a maintenance team or accounts payable team, whoever handles the 1099 distribution or the tax forms distribution within the finance or the AP function, right? This is something that is typically given to you, is already calculated by another department, say payroll, or maybe the acquisition department or the group that maintain that. And so if you have to file, right, that golden parachute payments in box 1 of the 1099 NEC because payments were to contractors, and then any excess amount in or on box in box 3 of the 1099 NEC. That's something that's probably will be given to you because it needs to be calculated, and those are typically not payments that are invoice based. And so that's the reason why I say those types of payments will probably come from another department, and all you will need to do is take those amounts and place them in the correct boxes of the correct forms. And that for tax year 2025 seems to be the 1099 NEC, because if you're making payments to contractors, then and they are golden parachute payments, those will be reported in box 1 of the 1099 NEC. And if or for any excess golden parachute payments, those will be reported in box 3 of the 1099 NEC. Now, again, I have linked the instructions for Forms 1099-MISC and 1099-NEC revision April 2025 in the show notes, along with the IRS forms themselves, the April 2025 version of the 1099-MISC and the 1099-NEC. And remember the disclaimer, make sure you seek a tax professional for any questions about tax filing or the 1099-MISC or 1099-NEC forms distributions to your vendors. But if you do want some training on a checklist for the 1099-MISC, 1099-NEC, and the 1042S reporting, I do have a year-end checklist training that I have linked in the comments that is coming up. I believe it's in October or November. And just keep in mind, it is from an accounts payable perspective, from the vendor team perspective, where I'm talking logistics and what you need to know in order to get your tax forms out the door by January 31st. Actually, for 2026, it's going to be February 2nd, 2026, because of how the dates fall. But I'm talking about things from a logistics standpoint, things that you need to keep in mind as you are preparing the forms and also the tax filings too. So make sure you check that out and click through and learn more if you are interested. All right. So thanks, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the 337th episode of the Putting the AP in Happy podcast, where accounts payable teams are empowered to protect the vendor master file from fraud. Don't forget to check the show notes for the links mentioned in the podcast. And if you enjoyed this episode, consider subscribing and writing a review of my podcast on the platform that you use to listen. Stay happy.